Well, I think I could make this a very short talk tonight, what she just said, but I'll try and express it somewhat differently. My favorite decade is the 1830s. That might be a little bit unfair to the 1640s and the 1960s, but we can live with it. It was an epoch where scientists were superstars. Scientists did demonstrations. And I love this concept, this conceit of the demonstration in the matter theatre. The two great scientists I'm thinking of there are Charles Lyell, who I'll be talking about a lot tonight, and Babbage, and in brackets also later Lovelace, who gave us the programmable computer, who'll be dark presences throughout. I offer you neither turtles nor pyrotechnics, but some very, very old seeds, which we'll get to play with. But let's start with some books. In the beginning, at least for our purposes, there was the Book of Nature. Natural theology taught us we could learn to interpret the book and reap lessons about God's work. Francis Bacon, who appeared in a very positive light in Naomi's talk a little bit earlier, as the originator of the experimental method, so canonical in science, wrote in the 16th century an astonishing essay entitled The Masculine Birth of Time, in which our dominion over nature moves into central focus. He wrote, So may I extend the now deplorably narrow limits of man's dominion over the universe to the permitted boundaries, which is the only object of my prayers among human things, as I shall disclose to you these things with the fullest conviction, with the deepest forecast of my mind, and the profoundest research into the present state of knowledge in the method of all others most legitimate. For Bacon, the Book of Nature had an alphabet. He wrote another actually totally weird piece I came across the other night called The Alphabet of Nature. Master the alphabet and you master the universe. Small wonder that he was attracted to Kabbalistic traditions. In general, the Book of Nature was explored to find proofs of God's working not available in the book, the Bible. The late 19th century, early 20th century found new metaphors being fired up, not in the pyrotechnic fashion of Elizabeth. We will look at nature as progressively an archive, a bank, and a database. But let's get seedy, both the material of my talk and how I'm feeling at the moment. This is the Mastixocarpum limnophilium phylum. It's from the Middle Eocene, the dawn. The Eocene epoch lasted from 56 to 33.9 million years ago. I love the precise dating. It was even on a Monday afternoon it finished. It began with a dramatic warming event, probably due to the release of methane that had been trapped in sediments on the ocean floor. In fact, the first 5 million years of the Eocene were warmer than any other time in the Cenozoic, our own era. It got a little bit cooler later. The Eocene, I love these seeds, something gorgeous little things. This, we're talking something between 56 and 33 million years old for this one. The Eocene epoch, then, was a term coined by the great geologist Charles Lyell, also mentioned by Naomi earlier, for those that were here. Lyell talked of the Earth as a rather bad archive. In a wonderful passage in his Principles of Geology, he discusses the Earth as an archive commissioner. He was working from the position that the Earth was always and will always be pretty much as it is. Its climate was constant. However, what we have access to is a set of records that seem to suggest that there was massive upheaval and discontinuity in the past. The gap between appearance and reality was the record-keeping process. Let the mortality, he writes, of the population of a large country represent the successive extinction of species and the births of new individuals, the introduction of new species. While these fluctuations were gradually taking place everywhere, suppose commissioners to be appointed to visit each province of the country in succession, taking an exact account of the numbers, names, and individual peculiarities of all the inhabitants, and leaving in each district a register containing a record of the information. If after the completion of one census, another is immediately made after the same plan, and then another, there will be, at the last, a series of statistical documents in each province. The commissioners are supposed to visit the provinces in rotation, whereas the commemorating process by which organic remains become fossilized, although they are always shifting from one area to another, are yet very irregular in their movements. So the want of continuity in the series can become indefinitely great. So it looks like the world changes all the time because the Earth's actually a fairly bad archivist. First and foremost, then, he's saying that the Earth is a sort of record keeper. Not a very good one, but a record keeper nonetheless. Geologists have expanded this, today have expanded this record-keeping function enormously, seeing traces of the distant past, beyond revolutions in the Earth's surface, and even before the creation of the Earth, in various isotope ratios. Our Earth weaves its own history into its own texture. Similarly, life itself writes its history into the Earth. The very oxygen that we breathe has been freed from the metabolic processes of cyanobacteria to enter the atmosphere. Their farts are our breaths. Massive, hard sea floors have been created by the disaggregated exoskeletons of planktons. These floors have fostered the development of new forms of life. Without life, the Earth itself would be an inhospitable place for life. It has become more and more livable for an increasingly complex set of organisms. Inversely, without the Earth as it is, inversely, without the Earth as it is, life might well be simpler. The current relative peak of biodiversity, and we're basically in a good period if we weren't fucking things up so badly. It's basically a pretty good time, has been related to the breakup of the giant continent, supercontinent Pangaea. You make the geology more complex, you create more niches, you get more complicated species. The geology, again, feeding into our life. The Anthropocene, then, is not some kind of weird, odd thing that we as humans are doing. It's a natural part of life. And as Elizabeth was talking about, let's really start examining that natural, unnatural division. The next item on the agenda, a rather smaller one, is Mastixia lusatica. It was first found in 1826 as the archives were getting going. This one comes from the Paleocene, just before the Eocene. In around the 1820s, 1830s, actually from about the 1790s, there was a frenzy of surveying nature and collecting specimens, then leading to what's been called the world's first bioinformatics crisis. I've seen, by the way, actually, we've already had it tonight, there's a little bit in what Dan was writing as well, a number of origins for the Anthropocene. This sort of reminds me of one of my favorite novels, William Golding's Free Fall, where he says, at what point did I lose my freedom? Was it when I was 12 and made this mistake? Was it when I was 16 and really messed up that relationship? Was it when I was 25 and decided I should buy a house? And he ultimately decides, well, it didn't really matter when you lost your freedom. The fact is that you did lose it. And it's very much the same with the Anthropocene. I don't care. I actually know that it started in the late 18th, early 19th centuries. But it doesn't matter what start date you put on it. It is the fact now. That is the world that we are living in. So tonight, I'm going to look at the metaphors of the archive, the bank, and the database. Some pretty information-intense ways of thinking about life on Earth. In 1798, Thomas Malthus publishes his essay on population, in which he argued that agricultural production was going up linearly and the population of the Earth was going up explosively, exponentially. As Michel Serres argues so beautifully, this is the epoch when we first started talking about the need to manage the planet. The planet was no longer an infinite resource. It was something that we needed to alter, we needed to change in order to render our own future lives livable. So let's look at the management of people, and let's look at people and archives first. A good citizen of the modern state is a citizen who can be well counted along multiple dimensions, on demand. We live in a regime of countability within a particular spirit of quantification. We're talking about people, think about seeds as well. Foucault pointed out that this is one of the principles of governmentality. A modern state needs to conjure its citizens into such a form that they can be enumerated. The state may then decide what kind of public health measures to take, where to provide schooling, what kind of political representation should be afforded, etc. Uncountables in the West are our version of the untouchables in India, a caste which can never aspire to social wealth and worth. In order to be fully countable and thus remembered by the state, a person needs to fit into well-defined classification systems, to be archivable. Very much the same for the kind of assemblages that Elizabeth was talking about before. We don't define assemblages precisely. We can't count them. What we can count, the unit that we seem to care about for some weird reason, is the species. Our next item on the agenda looks quite edible, actually. It's the it's the Eomastixia rugosa. It comes from about 48.6 to 23 million years ago. Lots of these are found in the Messel pit, the Grube Messel in Germany, which is a disused quarry near the village of Messel, about 30 km southeast of Frankfurt am Main. Bituminous shale was mined there. God, thinking about shale in the States now. Because of its abundance of fossils, it's achieved significant geological and scientific importance. After almost becoming a landfill, strong local resistance eventually stopped these plans, and the Messel pit was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site on 9th of September 1995. That's one of the things we seem to want to do with nature right now, is to take it out of the temporal flow, take it out of the flow of history, take it out of the flow of time. And I think the way in which we deal with and handle and enjoy the Anthropocene is precisely recognizing that that cannot work. So let's look at nature and archives next. Lyell believed that we didn't really have much effect on the Earth. The archives of nature, he wrote, are in perfect accordance with historical records. And when we lay open the most superficial covering of peat, loads of these fossils were found in peat, by the way. It's a really good record keeper. We sometimes find therein the canoes of the savage, together with huge antlers of the wild stag or the horns of the wild bull. This proves that at periods comparatively modern in the history of the globe, the ascendancy of man, if he existed at all, had scarcely been felt among the brutes. Scarcely been felt by the brutes. How different it is today. The Messel pit, as I was saying, is a symbol of one fairly dominant view of nature. We need to move it out of the flow of time. Right now, we are trying to keep too hard to keep our temperature constant and to preserve current species. This is an accounting technique, the single number technique. Let's keep the temperature where it is. Let's keep the number of species where they are. The units that we should be dealing with are not this. What we should be trying to do is preserve change and preserve the ability for species to change and develop over time, and ourselves to change and develop over time in consonance with them. The accounting technique being used here is very, very like Charles Lyell's assertion that every bit of land lost to the sea was gained somewhere else. Double entry bookkeeping, it appears, rules nature. Okay, on to the Mastixia thomsonii. These are thermophiles, much like myself, they like heat. Their discovery in Poland was somewhat controversial, but they are, as you can see, pretty well preserved. Mastixia is a genus of about 19 species of resinous evergreen trees. Its current range extends from India through Southeast Asia and New Guinea to the Solomon Islands. It really was pretty warm back then. What I want to bring out from this is again the point, climates are always changing. There is no way in the world that we're going to fix the current climate that we're dealing with. What we need to do is learn how to deal with change, be it anthropogenic change or natural change. Or again, as I would argue, let's not make that false distinction. On to our next specimen, which is called Tectocaria renana. This one's fairly young, 16 to 5 million years ago. This fossil is pretty well commodified. You can pick one up at $12 at an online fossil shop. If you come up to see me after the talk today, I can offer you a bit of a discount. So let's store them in a bank vault. So banking nature. What would happen if we just banked all the seeds? We can't preserve life on Earth, so let's just put them in a bank. All we need to do after we'd scorched the Earth would be to roll it back to where it was before we began. That is one vision of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which is a secure seed bank in the Norwegian island of Spitsbergen in the remote Arctic Svalbard archipelago. And you've got to say there's something weird about that to start with, that we assume that Norway is stable. If I read Naomi's novelette correctly, Norway is likely to be a scene of some pretty violent political turmoil in the next couple of hundred years. But anyway, Norway is safe, Costa Rica is not. It was started to preserve a wide variety of plant seeds that are spare copies of seeds held in gene banks worldwide. The Seed Vault is an attempt to assure against the loss of seeds in other gene banks during large-scale regional or global crises. We really need to think here about what is the unit of preservation. Seeds, genetic information, a really odd unit of preservation. I am a commonwealth, as Donna Haraway so beautifully put it. Actually, Donna is a commonwealth. 90% of the cells in our body are foreign flora and fauna. We are not our genetic information. These seeds do not contain the seed of their own future development. This came in fairly. There's a weird project. Stuart Brand, who was big in the 60s, my third favorite decade. Stuart Brand is trying to reinvent the passenger pigeon, which used to blacken the skies on the east coast of America. There were so many millions of them flying down south from Canada at the appropriate season. What will be created there, if he succeeds, they were destroyed by us. We used to shoot them from the sky, much like the buffaloes, and we ate them out of existence, unlike that rather appetizing turtle over there. So we won't get the microflora and fauna of the passenger pigeon. We also will not preserve the habitat in which it used to exist. We used to have different forest cover on the eastern seaboard of the United States because of the eating habits of the passenger pigeon. So we release passenger pigeons right now. They're in a strange new world. What happens when we roll out this genetic information is not that we roll back the past, it's that we create a new world, a new strange kinds of hybrid. Finally, for tonight, the Mastixia holzapfelfilii. These are found in peat bogs, which is nature's way of preserving seeds. They can be found in a site near Oberdorf, Austria. The nearby village should be a model for us all. It's increased in population from 714 in 1869 to 741 in 2013. And I think a few people have left since. Only some of the more than 120 food and seed taxa identified for Oberdorf occur regularly in all parts of the sequence. Seeds help us identify climate change over time. The species that could flourish there at that time in that stratum are an indication, a fairly good proxy indication of temperature. So now finally onto nature as a database. One project going on today is about storing the seed in a database. The Elixir project, according to its website, is spearheading one of the most ambitious projects in the history of humankind to store, share, and assure the preservation of biological information for generations, including the genetic code of every living creature on Earth known to science. It's just crap. Elixir partners are building an intelligent, responsive, and sustainable system that will deliver the fruits of these advances to the scientists upon whom so many hopes are pinned. So we're moving from nature as a database to nature in the database. From sustainable nature, which we now deem impossible, we're in danger of the dream of moving into the sustainable database. This is sort of like Ray Kurzweil's wet dream in Silicon Valley that we're all going to move into computers and live happily ever after. Infrastructures don't get sustained that easily. Information doesn't get that sustained that easily. The problem of sustaining information is pretty much as difficult as the problem of sustaining species. So we've gone from nature as a book to nature as an archive, to nature in a bank vault, to nature in a database. One of the wonderful possibilities which may emerge from the conclave of folks meeting at Ashkadve these days is that we can truly reconsider our relationship with nature. Naming the Anthropocene is a major step forward. As Bacon believed, the Kabbalistic Bacon, names have weight and meaning in the world. Thank you.